Welcome to The World Today. I'm WAQAS Majeed Khan. Today we're covering three stories in our program. The first one is to do with the Indian elections. Indian Prime Minister Mr. Modi has voted in the third phase of the mammoth general election taking place over there. We'll discuss that. And our second topic is to do with the statement by our Foreign Minister, Mr. Qureshi, who has said that Pakistan wants cordial ties with all neighboring countries, of course. And our third topic is to do with the statement of our Prime Minister, Mr. Imran Khan, in Iran, where he said that no militant groups will be allowed to operate from Pakistan. To talk about these issues, let me introduce my guests in the studio. Joining me for the conversation today, first of all, we have Dr. KHURRAM Iqbal Saab with us, and we will also be joined by Brigadier Syed Nazir. Thank you very much, KHURRAM, for being here. Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's home state of Gujarat is the scene of the action, and Mr. Rahul Gandhi's seat is in Kerala. How do you see the voting progressing in India, especially when we have incidents coming out where an Indian man cut off his index finger because he accidentally voted for the BJP? What does that indicate to you?
Well, it indicates that BJP, yes, it is likely to make a comeback, but not with a great margin. If you look at the surveys and opinion polls conducted right before the elections, the support for Bharatiya Janata Party has declined and decreased significantly. It is mainly due to the policies adopted by Bharatiya Janata Party. It is mainly due to the failures on the promises that they have made in the previous elections. They failed to deliver on them. For example, if you talk about Gujarat, it represented a very interesting case. Gujarat was a scene of a large-scale anti-Muslim riots. Before the Indian elections, Modi was considered as the butcher of Gujarat. But interestingly, in 2014, Modi managed to attract significant support even from the Muslim minority of Gujarat. And that was mainly due to his economic policies, in which he basically promised to make Gujarat great, to represent it as an economic model of success throughout India. But that has not worked.
At the time, Gujarat was touted as a great model for economic success under the CM-ship of Mr. Modi.
Certainly.
How true was that?
Well, there was an element of truth, there is no doubt. That is what gained a lot of support to Narendra Modi, and even the minorities in Gujarat, they came to believe Modi that once, if the economic issues are resolved, then the communal harmony will increase. But what we have seen during the last 5 years or so, that Modi has failed to deliver on his performance or promises of economic development. For instance, if you look at the figures related to unemployment rate in India, during last 50 years, the unemployment is at highest in India. Similarly, their overall GDP, that is not likely to grow as fast as the Modi has promised. Then again, Modi's social or political policies that have backfired, and Pulwama is the most recent example. Then if you go to the northeastern state of India, Modi and his Bharatiya Janata Party have faced tremendous opposition from the minority groups, mainly because of the citizen bill that was introduced by Bharatiya Janata Party. The major goal of introducing that Citizenship Act was basically to change the demographic composition of the states which have been affected by insurgent movements in the past. So what Modi planned was basically to replace the indigenous population with hardcore Hindus, so that there is no future possibility of those states going to insurgency. Same he adopted in case of Kashmir, where in his election campaign he declared, rather BJP declared, that they are going to revoke 35A, which allows non-Kashmiri to settle in the disputed land. Now, the first thing is that revoking 35A is clear violation of United Nations resolutions on Kashmir. Why? Because according to UN resolutions, the issue of Kashmir has to be resolved through a plebiscite. If Modi changes the demographic of Kashmir, then of course he is likely to get favorable results whenever that plebiscite takes place. And then his plan to change Kashmiris or convert Kashmiris into minority in Kashmir, I think that is likely to have some serious repercussions for Bharatiya Janata Party. It is mainly because Kashmiris would not like to see non-Kashmiris coming and occupying their lands. And this is something that Narendra Modi has learned from the Israeli manual of counterinsurgency. Now Modi wishes to represent India as Israel of South Asia, but Modi must not forget that Israel, because of the same policies, has become an international stigma.
Yeah.
So if Modi continues to follow the Israeli manual of counterinsurgency, that may compromise the very secular, I would say, identity of India that has been shaped during last 70 years or so.
And
so
we're seeing that happen, actually, sir. I want to share with you a few of the comments that have come from the voters themselves. According to a survey, various voters were asked a series of questions. To which some of them I replied, which I'll share with you. One of the voters said that they think job creation, sustainable development, and communal harmony should be the top priorities for the upcoming government. And if BJP is in power, do you think that they will be paying attention to communal harmony anytime soon?
I think that was the most important casualty if BJP makes it to power again. Because if you look at the last 5 years of BJP's rule inside India, that has seriously damaged the secular fabric of Indian society. Intercommunal relations have been tarnished, disturbed to the core. If you look at the statistics available on incidents of terrorism during year 2018, compiled by an American university, majority of terrorist attacks inside India have been conducted by saffron terrorist organizations against Muslims, Christians, and scheduled caste Hindus.
Right.
So, and the same elements are being harbored and protected by Bharatiya Janata Party. The lady who himself participated in the demolition of Babri Mosque, who was involved in Samjhauta train blasts, she was given a ticket by Bharatiya Janata Party to contest elections.
In Bhopal.
In Bhopal. So if that's the state of affairs, that is certainly not going to help India to bridge the gaps which have emerged between the different communities of the country.
Dr. Saab, another voter was of the opinion that they feel that the BJP is hell-bent on running the campaign on national security, and basically if they bring up any other thing, they would find it, they'll find themselves on difficult terrain, like on economic issues or their performance. They really don't have much to show. So the only rallying cry they have left is security. Do you think the Indian voter is going to buy into that, considering the fact that 80% of India is a Hindu majority? Why would they feel threatened by small minorities, whether they're Muslim, Christian, or Dalit, or any other? Although the Dalit are not a minority.
Waqas, we live in a post-truth era where hyper-nationalism sells pretty well, where people are more concerned about politics that is done along ethnic or religious lines. People are least interested about hardcore facts, empirical evidences, and a developmental agenda. We have seen that in different parts of the world, far-right extremist organizations are making inroads into the parliament. There was a time when far-right organizations in India, in Europe, in the United States of America, they were on the periphery. But now they are taking a center stage thanks to the public approval of their agenda.
Well, sir, we've also been joined by Lieutenant General NAEEM Khalid Lodhi Saab. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us. Sir, we're talking about the Indian election and Mr. Modi's chances. What we are seeing here, sir, is that for the Indian voter, the economy, women's safety, unemployment are major issues. But Mr. Modi is hell-bent on focusing his campaign on security and also using Pakistan for that purpose. What is your view, sir?
Thank you very much. Actually, you see, what happens is that in any society, once extremism takes roots, and it is not only Indian society, the others also, as my brother was just talking about, then rhetoric and sentiments, they come up to be more important as compared to logic, cool analysis, and that is the phenomena that is happening in India also, as elsewhere also it's taking roots. So I think it's a global phenomena, and more extremist version of it is happening in India. You have seen yourself what has happened in Israel. Even such a great country like America, some rhetoric, some nationalism, these things are becoming more important for the people. I think people, once they feel deprived and once they feel left out, they do not listen to any logic, then they just go by the rhetorics or slogans. So that is what is happening, and I think it would be a pity, and it looks quite obvious also that in spite of all this, he may win. BJP may win the election, and that will be counterproductive for Indians themselves, because India, which was known to be a great democracy and bastion of secularism, they are all out to demolish all that by themselves. So I don't know how they're going to arrest this phenomenon.
Sir, we've seen that in this particular election, security has been the main rallying cry for the BJP. At the same time, what would you say about the role of the Election Commission of India in trying to control the rhetoric by BJP, especially when it talks about promoting Mr. Modi's image via a web series or applications, and also the use of Pakistan and denigrating Muslims for garnering votes? Do you think the Election Commission has played their due part in trying to control such actions?
I think they have made an attempt, all right. Yeah, we are aware of their, certain interventions where they have even disqualified one odd person, and they have been warning and they have been cautioning people. But, in any democracy, such institutions are only effective if the whole society is democratized and they listen to them and they respond to them. That, I think the response has not been good, and I don't think the Election Commission could have done more than this, because there's a popular, you can say, uprising sort of thing towards extremism, which is happening in India. So Election Commission can only go up to a certain distance, which they have tried, but not very successfully, I would say. So whatever is happening in India, we feel concerned about it, all right, because they are taking our name and then trying to win this election. But I think they are doing something to themselves, something bad to themselves, and they might, land up undoing what some of their great leaders have done in the past. So let us see. Let us have our fingers crossed and see what they actually act and behave after they win the elections. That would be more important. In my own assessment, although we do not have much insight into the Indian polity, I think he may not be getting the same majority as it was with the previous government. He may still come in power with a slightly reduced majority, but let us see what he does afterwards, and how the opposition actually stops him from doing all what he's saying, and what happens to their inner fabric, social fabric, after all the rhetorics, and this has to be seen. Yeah.
All right, sir. Thank you very much for sharing your views with PTV World. That was Lieutenant General NAEEM Khalid Lodhi sharing with us his opinion of what is happening in the Indian vote. One last question regarding this, sir, is that when we look at the discerning voter in India, they have this to say that women's safety, unemployment are major issues that need to be sorted out, but they also disapproved of Modi's taking up airstrikes in Pakistan, which led to aerial clashes between the nuclear-armed rivals. They feel that using that card for garnering votes is not the best strategy for the BJP. What do you think about that?
Well, it depends whether Congress will be able to capitalize upon such a sentiment among its constituency. These such sentiments are quite, I would say, they are mainstream in Indian society. There are quite a big chunk of Indian voter which is quite aware and conscious of all the manipulation that's been done by Bharatiya Janata Party in the name of security. But we should also remember that Congress suffers from a leadership crisis. Although Priyanka did try to fill that gap. She was launched few months before
A
the
little
elections.
too late.
I think it was little too late. So what we are likely to see after the elections is that, yes, BJP may likely make a comeback, but not with a heavy majority. But should that concern us? I think that should concern not only Pakistan, but the entire international community as well. Because world's largest democracy, led by an extremist who is also a lifelong member of Rashtriya Seva Manyak Sangh, a terrorist organization, I think that would pose a serious challenge to the global security. And India being a nuclear armed state, and such a state falling in the hand of Hindu extremists could jeopardize the international and regional security as well.
Indeed, there's no doubt about that. Sir, let's move on to our second topic, and taking a leaf out of the book of the Foreign Minister, Mr. Qureshi, he said on Monday that Pakistan desires peaceful relations with all of its neighbors for establishing peace and stability in the region. Now, when we look at the rhetoric that is emanating from India, where the Indian Prime Minister is saying that the nuclear weapons are not there for Diwali celebrations, and us, on the other hand, or the Pakistani narrative, is that we want peace. And we want peace not just for ourselves, but for the entire region. Do you think that the international community would be observing the two narratives emanating from South Asia, or do you think that they don't really care?
Well, in the past, when such irresponsible statements were issued by some odd Pakistani politicians, international community came really hard against Pakistan, considering it as an aggressive nuclear posturing. But how international community, especially West, reacts to Modi's recent statement that we have not kept nuclear weapon for Diwali, I think it should ring some alarm bells in the Western capitals.
Sir, Mr. Qureshi was speaking in Tokyo, and he was interacting with intellectuals and businessmen associated with the Japan Institute of International Affairs. He said that the incumbent government wants to transform Pakistan into an industrial and trade center, and there is a need to establish new trade centers in the region to strengthen economic and trade relations. How effective do you think our foreign minister's speech would have been for the Tokyo audience? Do you think that we can see some further enhancement of bilateral engagement with Japan and Pakistan? Although we have had Japan helping Pakistan earlier, but it seems that that relationship is also sort of on the back burner.
Certainly, the time and place of this statement is quite significant, because what we have seen during last 1 year, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf has sought to diversify its developmental partners. Previously, we have seen our governments relying too much on China with regards to infrastructural development, with regards to the socio-economic development of Pakistan. And of course, China has been coming very helpful to Pakistan, but putting all your eggs in one basket is never advisable. So what we have seen under the current government, they are diversifying the developmental partners. And Japan has always been a key player when it comes to the development. For instance, with regards to Japan's role in the development of India or Indonesia, these are two case studies where Japan has offered developmental loans on interest as low as 0.1%. So that is where Pakistan can tap in. Pakistan can request Japan for low interest loans, and that would come very handy for the current government.
And also technological transfer. Mr. Qureshi in his meetings also impressed upon the Japanese leadership to invest more in Pakistan. He also spoke about the regional security situation and also mentioned Pakistan-India tensions and the situation in Afghanistan. He spoke about that. How important do you think these issues would be to the Japanese audience?
I think diversification is always helpful, it's very important, but with regards to Pakistan's relations with Japan, there are certain limitations that we face. Because if you look at the structure of the world politics, now Japan sits in a different camp. Japan is an important player of the American grand strategy in the Asia Pacific. There is a lot of convergence of interest between Japan and America, Japan and India. So that is the major limitation that we will face, because our close association with China has made number of countries uncomfortable. Although Japan has avoided getting politically involved in all this, but I think there is a limit to our economic or technological cooperation that we can attain with Japan.
Absolutely, sir. Let's move on to our third topic. Dr. Saab, no militant group will be allowed to operate from Pakistan, statement by Prime Minister Imran Khan. We also heard about the setting up of a rapid reaction force to deal with the terrorist incidents. This was an agreement that was reached between Iran and Pakistan. Mr. Rouhani also, this conversation between Mr. Khan and Mr. Rouhani seems to have helped ease tensions between the two countries. What is your impression of this latest trip by the Prime Minister to Iran?
Well, I think it came at the right time. There was a certainly need to bridge the gap between the two countries that was created by some unfortunate incidents of terrorism on the both sides of the borders. But we should keep in mind that the relationship between Pakistan and Iran are quite broad-based. There's a lot of convergence that is existing between the two countries on political issues, on economic issues, and strategic issues as well. For example, both Iran and Pakistan, they consider the rise of China as an opportunity for the countries who have suffered at the hand of unchallenged American hegemony. So both Iran and Pakistan look forward to a world where the central of power would be quite diverse and decentralized. So that is one point of convergence. Similarly, with regards to Afghanistan, Pakistan and Iran both agree to a solution which basically paved the way for long-term peace inside Afghanistan.
Of course.
At the moment, what we see is that Daesh presents a very potent threat to Iran as well as Pakistan as well, because they have tried to make inroads here. But both Iran and Pakistan, they plan to fight Daesh by engaging Afghan Taliban, by taking Afghan Taliban on board. So I think with regards to Afghanistan, there is convergence as well. Yes, the issue of cross-border terrorism, that is one soaring point of the relationship. And we should not forget that when it comes to cross-border terrorism, Iran and Pakistan have a long history of cooperation and joint anti-terrorism campaigns. Going back to 1970s, when Pakistan faced an insurgency in Balochistan, it was Iran who helped Pakistan with gunship helicopters to quell the separatist militant movement inside Balochistan. Similarly, when Iran was hit by a wave of attacks involving Jundullah, Iran, that was the time when Iran shared actionable intelligence with Pakistan. That was somewhere around 2010. Pakistani authorities, they acted swiftly, they apprehended the head of that organization, handed him over to Iran, Iranians executed him, and then when he was replaced by his brother, again there was a joint operation by the Iranian and Pakistani intelligence agencies to nab Abdul Zubair Rigi as well, and he was also successfully apprehended. Similarly, 4 or 5 months ago, when some non-state terrorist actors, when they kidnapped 8 of members, 7 or 8 perhaps members of Pasdarane Inqilab from the Pak-Iran border, Iran requested Pakistani authorities to act, and Pakistan has successfully rescued 5 of those kidnapped members. So I think the history of joint anti-terrorism mechanism between the two countries is quite long. There's a lot of trust that exists on the issue of counterterrorism, and our foreign minister has also made it very clear that Pakistan will not fall prey to the spoiler's trap. And that spoiler trap, he's basically referring to those non-state actors who are trying to basically disturb the bilateral relations between the two countries.
Absolutely, and Mr. Imran Khan made it clear that Pakistan would not allow its territory to be used against any neighbor, including Iran. He said that there is a political consensus in Pakistan that terrorist groups have no place in the country. We've been talking about that for quite some time, and he also said that we will not allow any militant group to use our soil against anyone. Of course, it is continuing with what you just mentioned about the long-standing history of cooperation in anti-terrorism. But going forward, how can we further enhance the bilateral relationship between Iran and Pakistan? We've seen that the business has gone down. Investments from both sides have also reduced. So is there some way that we can improve on our economic relationship as well as our security relationship?
To work on the economic front, I think we first need to sort out the issues on the security front. And of course, terrorism is one major problem. If non-state actors have been active on both sides, we must admit, spoiling the relations, I think it was not because of the involvement of the states, either with Iran or Pakistan. It was due to some other factors. For example, the ungoverned border regions. The failure of both governments to manage Pak-Iran border effectively. So in this regard, Pakistan has proposed to Iran that we will fence the border with Iran. And the good thing is that there is simply no border or territorial dispute between Pakistan and Iran. So it will not be as challenging for Pakistan to fence its border with Iran as it was with Afghanistan. So Pakistan has the will. Pakistan, despite the issues of capacity, because the border fencing is a multi-billion rupees project,
yes,
and despite its financial constraints, Pakistan has demonstrated that we will fence the border to stop undesirable movement of people and goods on the border. So I think that's a right step into the right direction, because it will not only complement our internal security, that will also help to bridge the gap between Pakistan and Iran on the issues related to counterterrorism.
Absolutely, and he also spoke about Afghanistan and its impact on both Iran and Pakistan. 2.7 million Afghan refugees in Pakistan, 3 million in Iran. What impact do you think that has had in the bilateral relationship of both countries? Because we are both supporting and helping our Afghan brothers. Do you think that has had some security implications for both countries?
Certainly it does. I would say that both Pakistan and Iran have paid a huge price for this conflict in Afghanistan in form of millions of refugees that you see on the both sides. Iran and Pakistan, economically, they are not as prosperous as the countries in the West, but despite those economic constraints, both countries have hosted millions of refugees from Afghanistan. That is one reason that Pakistan has always advocated that the regional players should take a lead with regards to finding a durable solution to Afghan problem, because it's the regional countries who would suffer if there is no peace in Afghanistan.
Well, the Prime Minister also met the Iranian Supreme Leader, Mr. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. A joint statement was issued in which they said that Iran and Pakistan enjoy historical, cultural and religious ties, and they also intend to expand their relations in areas of mutual interest, deepening and reinforcing our bilateral ties based on the principles of national interest, territorial integrity, mutual respect for national sovereignty, and to combat threats such as terrorism, smuggling of narcotics, human trafficking, hostage-taking, money laundering, abduction, so on and on. And there is going to be another round of a special security committee to discuss further cooperation in June. What are your expectations from that? Why is it necessary to have a special security committee?
Before I comment on that, I think we should take into account the structure of the relationship, as the President of Iran has rightly mentioned, that this structure is quite strong between the two countries, and that structure includes the cultural ties, the religious ties, the political ties and historical ties. If you look at the history of Pakistan, Iran was the first country that officially recognized Pakistan. And then when we went into a war with India in 1965, Iran provided strategic depth to Pakistan. That was the level of support that we got from Iran. It was only recently that the relationship between the two countries suffered from certain problems. And few of those problems, of course, as we have discussed, related to terrorism. But again, there was another issue of Iran warming up towards India at the cost of its relations with Pakistan. When it comes to Chabahar port, Iran has certainly not taken Pakistan into confidence with regards to the Indian role in Chabahar, because that is just next door to Gwadar. Although in the recent visit and in successive media talks by the Iranian authorities, there is a desire to link Gwadar and Chabahar, but well, that's a good idea, but the real side of implementing this idea, it's quite problematic because of the presence of Indians there. Similarly, when Pakistan invited Saudi Arabian investment in Gawadar in form of an oil refinery, so a number of observers, they objected that it may irk Iran. Iran may not be comfortable with the presence of Saudis just next door. So I would say that Iran did not seek our permission before inviting Indians to Chabahar, so as we should also pursue our national interests, but as a sovereign country. But there is certainly some middle ground that could be paved, and the best idea to deal with this issue of Gawadar and Chabahar port is not only to declare them as sister ports, but to link them physically through ferry service or through a vibrant road network. So I think that is a major step that could be taken that would help boost confidence between the two countries.
Well, let's hope for that, sir. We've also been joined by Mr. IMTIAZ Gul, senior analyst. Thank you very much for joining us, Gul Saab. Sir, we're talking about the Pakistan Iran bilateral relationship. Prime Minister Imran Khan is over there and has also mentioned that terrorism is an issue that both countries will be cooperating on. What are your expectations furthering and improving our bilateral relations, sir?
Well, I would say that in the last 7 decades, for the first time, the issue of security and terrorism has moved to the center point of the bilateral conversation. I think until now, both countries had been just exchanging pleasantries and vows of mutual bilateral cooperation on political issues as well as economic issues. And economic cooperation really didn't move forward. I mean, we just had about $350 million bilateral trade. Official, unofficial is probably $1.3 billion, undocumented largely. So I think this is a qualitative change in the bilateral relationship, and I guess it was the need of the hour, and in fact the visit was also prompted by the February 14 killing of the Revolutionary Guards as well as the April 18 attack in Ormara in Balochistan. So I think once both countries agree on a mechanism for a joint cooperation and operation against terrorist groups, the relationship perhaps could become smoother. And I think it was quite evident from the body language of the Prime Minister that he was tense, and the President Rouhani was raising issues which both may have discussed, but there was not a real agreement, because agreement probably will follow after detailed discussions on the matters such as banking facilities for Iran, oil and gas exports to Pakistan, because all this will come under basically will be affected by the U.S. Sanctions on Iran, and there is no easy way out for Pakistan either. And in fact, a close ally of the United States, India, will also face similar pressures coming out of the U.S. sanctions. So I think there are issues that are very thorny, which have a multilateral geopolitical dimension, and that makes the relationship complicated. However, we should hope that Pakistan finds a way around the U.S. sanctions, Pakistan pursues an independent foreign policy, and that the conversation on terrorism, on security, somehow materializes in a positive, fruitful way.
Gul Saab, our Prime Minister has also spoken about cooperation with Iran, which includes the opening of new border crossings and border markets. How do you see that developing, sir? And furthermore, already the energy sector is being supported by Iran because they have been giving electricity to certain parts of Balochistan. How do you see that continuing? And then we have the gas pipeline project as well, of course, if you'd like to comment on that, sir.
Well, the gas pipeline project is a pipe dream so far. However, the two new border crossings, I think, reflect a new, or the agreement to open these two new points as soon as possible, underscore a new dimension in the bilateral relationship in addition to the counterterrorism dialogue. And I think this will be the best use of the geographical proximity that both countries enjoy. Once the border crossing points increase from the present one Zahedan to another 3, I think this will facilitate a lot of border trade, and we are trading with Iran already a lot, and both formally and informally. And I think this will probably also be a way around the U.S. sanctions if both countries agree to let the private sector take lead in this kind of border trade, barter trade via the 3 border points.
Well, thank you very much, Gulsar, for taking out the time and sharing your views with PTV World. Well, coming back to the studio, a very interesting thing that was mentioned by Gulsar is the U.S. sanctions when it comes to dealing with Iran. And Pakistan has been facing that brunt and has been under immense pressure because of those U.S. sanctions in dealing with Iran, because that gas pipeline, as he mentioned, has remained a pipe dream, which is desperately needed for Pakistan. So how are we going to deal with the U.S. sanctions and still be able to forge ahead with our bilateral relationship?
I think under international sanctions imposed on Iran, there's a limit to our relations with Iran. During this visit, Iranian president has offered Pakistan oil, energy, and gas as well, but the problem is whether that is doable and possible with Iran under strict international watch. Americans gave a waiver to a number of countries.
Yes, but I think that's
import
also
oil
over
from Iran. That included Turkey, India, but that waiver has also expired.
And Turkey has actually said that they don't care and they will continue to get oil from Iran, whereas India has said now they will be looking for alternate sources. What do you make of that?
I think that's a very interesting development, because thus far India has projected Iran as its ally and friend in the Gulf region. But if India toes the American line, that would create space for Pakistan, because this is exactly what India did when Iran came under international sanctions before the Obama regime. That was a time when India stopped importing oil from Iran and refused to pay for the oil that they had already imported, and the bill was in billions of dollars, and Indians still owe that amount to the Iranians. So now Iranians should understand that what India says about Chabahar, it's all rhetoric. When it comes to the practical steps, India will never diverge from the American dictation when it comes to Iran. So that is where Pakistan should tap in. I think a stance like Turkey is most suitable for Pakistan, because we at the moment suffer from a serious energy crisis. And if there is one country that can fulfill and that can meet Pakistan energy requirement, that is Iran. And that is also on rates which are affordable to Pakistan. If you talk about Gwadar, there's a serious issue of energy shortage. That's where Iran has already helped by exporting a few hundred megawatts to Gwadar, which help basically to lit the industries in Gwadar. So I think our stance on Iran should be very clear. Now we should understand that the age of American unchallenged hegemony is over. States are pursuing their national interest, even if it comes at the cost of American displeasure.
Right, sir. We leave it at that. Thank you very much for taking out the time and sharing your views with PTV World. Well, you heard the conversation, and as always, I like to say, please draw your own conclusions from what you've heard. And on that note, it's goodbye.